I received the signed bills. Make sure not to bill me until you receive the updated rate confirmation. I tell you, there's some pretty crafty brokers out there. You really have to watch out for them. I've sometimes wondered if these guys go to school to learn different ways to screw you over, different ways to delay paying you or get out of paying you altogether. It's been, I think back, it's July now, so back in early February, I picked up a load in Lincolnton, North Carolina. Took it over to Laverne, Tennessee. It was, I forget the name of the company it went to, but it's for Home Depot. It was picking up these pre-made, like bathroom vanities and everything, from a place in Lincolnton, North Carolina, taking it over. Interline, I think is the name of it, in Laverne, Tennessee. And they're like a Home Depot owns them, I believe, but it's like their distribution center. And the broker gave me a time window of between 3:30 and 5:30, or 3 and 5:30, something like that. And I actually wound up getting there around 3:30, 4 o'clock. So I was early. Well, then I get there, and I'm told that my appointment isn't until 5:30. And that's just the beginning. So I get to Interline Brands in Laverne, Tennessee. I get checked in. I'm an hour and a half early, maybe 2 hours early. So I have to sit and wait. So I sit and wait. That was the first lie that the broker told me. 3:30 to 5:30 was my window, but in reality, the real appointment time wasn't until 5:30. Now, the broker on this load is a company called Scott Logistics. I believe they're out of Rome, Georgia. And this was the first lie that they told me. Well, then 5:30 comes around, I get back inside, get checked in, and the lady gives me a door assignment, and she says, get into that door, and they'll let you know whenever they get you unloaded. Okay, that's fine. I had been here one other time, and I was in and out within hour and a half, 2 hours, wasn't any big deal. So I sit there and I wait until around 7, and I've still felt no movement. I've not heard anyone in the trailer or nothing. So I get out and go inside. The people had no idea that I was a live unload. The people in the warehouse that unload the trucks thought that I was just a dropped trailer. The girl who checked me in, they had already done a shift change and she was gone home. So it took them 45 minutes, maybe an hour, and they got in there and got me unloaded. And I notified the broker whenever I was finally unloaded, and I noted my in and out times on the bill of lading. And by the way, when brokers tell you, you have to note the in and out times, that means you do it. You don't have to have the people in the warehouse do it. You do it. It's all they're wanting. There's some guys I've run into that they want to try to get the people in the warehouse to do it, and that's where their problems lie. But anyway, so I noted the in and out times on the bill of lading, sent all of that to the broker. The next morning I contacted her. I'm like, did you get all of that? Yeah, I got it. And I'm like, okay, when can I expect the updated rate confirmation that's going to have my detention on it? Well, I've sent that to the customer, and they have 24 to 48 hours to get back to me. Really? What does my agreement is with you, not with your customer. So this is between you and I, not me and your customer. And that's just one other way for them to, kind of blow you off and get out of paying you the detention. But then they tell you, I have requested the detention from the customer. Make sure you do not bill me until you receive the updated rate confirmation. That sounds a little fishy to me. I mean, if it's going to be 24 to 48 hours, if it was going to be 2 or 3 hours, even 6 or 7 hours, okay, I can hold off part of the day, even a whole day, before I send in the paperwork, because I'm factoring this load. I've never dealt with this broker before. I'm factoring this load so I get paid. And I'm supposed to wait 24 to 48 hours. Now, what happens if within that 24 to 48 hour period you haven't heard from your customer? Do I have to continue waiting? Probably. It's these kind of little things that little tricks brokers like to use to get out of paying you. I went ahead, before she ever told me that, I had gone in the night before, when I sent her the paperwork, I sent the paperwork to my wife, and my wife went ahead and submitted all of that to Love's, who we were using to factor that load with. And there was nothing said to me prior to that about, if you run into detention, this is what you have to do. The broker carrier agreement, there's no mention of that 24 to 48 hour time frame when it comes to detention. The rate confirmation, still no mention of it. And so I have to wonder, were they ever going to pay me the detention to begin with, or were they always going to be one of these that always has an excuse as to why they're not paying it? So I look at it as just another broker's lie, another broker's trick. If you are that desperate for money that you have to screw someone out of maybe $100, probably going to be around $60. But let's be generous. Let's say it's $200. In the grand scheme of things, that ain't that much. And you're gonna pass that cost on to your customer anyway. So what does it matter? Go ahead and pay the carrier, who you have the agreement with the carrier. So legally, the broker is responsible to the carrier regardless of what agreement they have with their customer. And regardless of whether the customer pays them or not, or if it pays them a week later, that has absolutely no bearing on your agreement with me. Your agreement with me is controlled by this broker carrier agreement. So this is what you and I are supposed to live by. And there's a little caveat in here. Upon carrier's completion of its obligations with regard to each load, carrier shall promptly provide broker with the applicable signed bill of lading, signed delivery receipt, and any other proof of delivery and related documents which broker may request. Upon receipt of such documents and carrier's invoice, and provided that carrier has fully completed performance of its obligations without loss, damage, or delay, broker shall pay carrier's freight charges within 30 days. Broker shall conduct all billing services to shippers or other responsible parties unless broker breaches its payment obligation to carrier, and carrier's written notice of such to broker. Broker's customer's payment of freight charges to broker shall constitute payment to carrier, and carrier shall not contact broker's customer regarding freight charges, nor bill or attempt to collect freight charges. You know, this is another one of those predatory broker schemes. But it doesn't address the detention, TANU, anything like that. So they're going to hide behind, well, it's our policies. This is how we do things. You know, that's neither here nor there. This broker carrier agreement, that is your legally binding agreement. That's the governing document. So this is a warning to everyone. Scott Logistics is another predatory broker. Scott Logistics will find a way to try to worm out of paying you, the carrier, what they legally owe. To this day, I've never heard another word from Scott Logistics. I've still got every email between me and this Shannon woman, and I've also got my entire text thread, and I'm going to include all of this in here. But I've got all of this, and I've never been paid. And this happened on February 9th, so the load would have been delivered on the night of the 9th, or probably on the 10th. I had to go back and look, but it probably was delivered on the evening of February 10th. So just keep that in mind. You come across a load from Scott Logistics out of Rome, Georgia, stay away, because they will screw you out of any additional money. They'll pay you eventually. What's the rate confirmation agreement? They'll pay that, provided that you picked it up on time, you delivered on time, there wasn't any delays or any damage or anything like that. If everything went well, it was just typical run, they'll pay you. And they'll pay you within 30 days, allegedly. I don't know, I factored the load, and so I was paid within 24 hours. But anything else you likely will not get, so just go into it with your eyes open. I would, as I stated in a previous video about predatory brokers, I would review very carefully the language in that broker carrier agreement and make sure you have a full understanding of it before you sign. So I didn't do that ahead of time. I was in an area I was trying to get out of, and this load, although it didn't pay what I would typically want, it was less than $200 what I would typically charge. So we reached an agreement on a price that was less than $200 of what I would normally want for that run. and it got me home. It got me out of that bad area that it's hard to get load out of sometimes. Usually, when you're in Newton, North Carolina area, if you can't find anything out of Hickory, you can't find anything out of Lincolnton area or even Statesville, you're going to have to deadhead down into Charlotte or go over to Greenville, Spartanburg area, and there's just not that much coming out of the Newton area on a consistent basis, unless it's coming out of Lincolnton or Hickory. That's been my experience. So, this got me out of a tight spot. So, just keep that in mind. Sometimes you have to, take loads that you normally wouldn't take. But man, these brokers, you really gotta watch them. You guys know Sammy from Make Sense. He just posted a video about how a broker hosed him, and because of the actions of that broker, that made him miss out on a couple of other loads that wound up costing him about $4,000 in missed revenue, all because of the lies and manipulations of one broker. So, I can't stress enough, be mindful of these brokers, pay attention. The devil is in the details. And just remember one thing. It's not always what you say, but how you say it. And when you're reading these things, keep that in mind, because the way that sentences are structured, the words that are used, can make a big difference if you ever have to take any of these guys to court to get what's owed. It can make a huge difference whether you win or lose. Not what you say, but how you say it. And the way sentences are structured, the words that are chosen. Lawyers have the reputation that they do for a reason, because they like to manipulate. And if they're working for you, you're their client, well, they're going to manipulate on your behalf. And there's nothing special about the broker carrier agreement with Scott, but it does leave out a lot of things. It does not address a lot of things. They cover those things under their policies, of which they don't provide you a copy of their policies. None of them ever do. So just be aware. Scott Logistics out of Rome, Georgia. Be mindful of any business that you do with them. Personally, I'll never do anything else with them. I look at them as just another predatory broker. Anybody that puts the kind of language in their broker carrier agreement that these guys put in theirs, it's very similar to what I see in companies like TQL. And just take your time, review documentation, be smart about things, and limit your losses. Also, in a situation like this, where I'm out that money, I'm noting it in our books because we actually billed that money and we've not been paid. So it's been noted in our books as being billed, and if we never collect that, then come into the year, we file the taxes next year for this year, well, then we're going to write that as a loss, because it is lost revenue that is legitimately earned, legitimately invoiced, and is legitimately owed to us. So I'll get my money one way or the other. I would recommend that every single person watching this take the time, find you a CPA, not a tax preparer, not a bookkeeper. Find you a CPA or a tax attorney and sit down, and it's worth a couple of $100 to pay these guys to sit down and pick their brain and educate you for 1 or 2 hours, because it can benefit you in the long run. If I got to pay $200 to sit down and talk to an attorney for an hour, hour and a half, and he answers my questions, and he can tell me about, if you're not paid TANU, or if I would typically charge, $200 a day or something like that on a TANU charge, and I want to charge $75 an hour, whatever it is, they can tell me how best to handle it, because all of these brokers, I once sat in Palmetto, Georgia, at an Owings Corning plant doing a drop and hook, and I sat there to pick up a trailer that was allegedly loaded before I ever arrived. I sat there for 19 hours only to be told that the load isn't going to be ready for another day or so they're canceling the load. I got a whole $250 from Convoy for 19 hours of my life being wasted. So you need to be able to address these kinds of concerns and these kind of questions with a tax attorney or a CPA. A tax attorney, the benefit of one of them is they can tell you from the IRS standpoint as well as from the law standpoint. And so in a lot of ways, a tax attorney is going to be a better fit to give you answers to all of these things. But if you bill $75 an hour, detention, and they only want to pay you $50, well then, that $25 an hour you're not getting paid, even though that's what you charge for your services. Brokers do not have a legal right to dictate what you get paid. You are a carrier. You have your own authority. You're no different than a J.B. Hunt, a C.R. England, a Prime Inc. None of these guys, they're on the same, they're bigger than you, but they're on the same level as you when it comes to Code of Federal Regulations, when it comes to anything related to FMCSA, DOT, when it comes to civil law, when it comes to criminal liability. They're no different than you. They're a bigger company, but from legal rights and authority, you're no different. So if you charge $75 an hour, a broker legally does not have the ability to dictate to you. Keep one thing in mind. A broker always has to move that load, but you don't have to take that load. That's enough for today. I've given you guys my rant for today, and you be safe, and I'll see you down the road. See you, bye.